Hello, welcome to week 11 of Global Human Development and Learning. This week we'll be talking about gender and sexuality issues. First, we are going to go over different theoretical perspectives on sex and gender. And the first one is a biological perspective. The proponents of the biological perspective view the expression of sex and its cultural context as predetermined by the genetic foundations of biological sex. So for instance, this would involve the biological aspects of femaleness or maleness and the sexual organs that one was born with at birth. And related to gender, the acquired behavioral or psychological aspects of being a woman or a man. So, how do you think the nature versus nurture impact these two definitions? According to the World Health Organization, male and female are sex categories, whereas masculine and feminine are gender categories. And it is important to note that gender can be best understood when one recognizes the role of culture and the influence of the ecological setting. Because culture plays a significant role in defining gender and how cultures view women, for example. The biological perspective also indicates that are predisposed to have certain hormones starting in prenatal development. So, for example, androgens or male sex hormones or estrogens for the female sex hormones. Testosterone is typically higher in males and it is responsible for what we consider the more aggressive behavior. And even though males typically display more aggressive behavior, there are certain situations where females are more aggressive than males, for example, when protecting their offspring. And it also, we need to think about how may also influence by encouraging aggressive behaviors in either of the genders. For example, in the Mexican culture, machismo is really encouraged, so males would be expected to be more aggressive than females. So the culture and that situation plays a really important role in encouraging aggressive behaviors in males. According to the evolutionary perspective, gender differences may be explained by an organism motivation to pass on genes by producing offspring and to assure that the survival of the species altogether. What this means is that this would be accomplished in a different way uh, in males compared to females. From this perspective, women can only produce a limited number of children through their lifetime, and they focus on creating an environment to ensure the survival of children, and they focus on food preparation, home maintenance, and protection of those in her family. On the other hand, males can produce almost an unlimited amount of children, and they try to in order to ensure the survival and passing of his genes. And the focus is on competing with other men for women in order to pass on genes and focusing on the physical strength and aggression. According to the socialization and learning perspective, from an early age, as part of the socialization process, children learn to conform to the roles that culture considers consistent with their biological sex. So, for example, girls are praised for exhibiting behavior that is considered desirable for women in the culture. And at the same time, they're discouraged from showing behavior that is inappropriate for girls or for women. And that's the same thing for male like behavior, and then behaviors are ridiculed that are more reserved for females. So How do you think that's displayed in the American culture? And when do you think children start to be socialized? So, for example, as I have mentioned before, I have young children. I have two boys, and I'm from Mexican origin. So when other people from Mexican origin, um, for example, see that I buy little brooms for my children to help me with the chores, they think that it is really weird, that I shouldn't be allowing them to do that because those specific behaviors or activities should be reserved for young girls. And when my children, for example, go and play with their cousins who are girls and who have a lot of toys for girls, um, some people may think that it's weird that I allow them to play, for example, with the dolls or or for them to have a tea party with their cousins. And for me, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but the culture tell us that there is something wrong. In addition, in the Mexican culture, there's also a lot of machismo. So people feel that, again, the male should be more aggressive and that it is okay for males uh, to have a lot of women, but and it is not appropriate for women to be out by themselves or to have relationships with many men. Expected that women would be more at home, taking care of the children, or if they're not married, that they should be helping their mother at the house. In your opinion, what are some strengths and weaknesses of each perspective? And why is it important to consider all three perspectives when looking at gender? Is there one perspective you think influences gender more than others? If so, which one? These are questions that you can start reflecting on, and we will have a chance to discuss these questions later on. As we look at the sex ratio at birth, globally, we can see that there's 107 males compared to females, 100. In general, there's more boys worldwide, and specifically in China, there are close to 35 million more males than females, which is, astonishing, and this can be a problem for males looking for a woman to marry relationship. And research has shown that the majority of the world still prefers to have a male at birth based on different cultural traditions because um, male children or sons, they tend to inherit the family wealth, name, and status in which they can pass on down to their own sons. And male children are also expected to support aging parents. And on the other hand, daughters tend to become part of the husband's family and may not have any lasting obligation towards their birth parents. And the dowry may be involved, which means that they may be a financial burden for their parents. So, as we have learned previously, parents are a critical part, or we would say primary source of socialization in young children's lives. And actually, research has shown that has been conducted in 25 countries across the world that children, by the time they were 8 years old, established different stereotypes, and by the time they were 9, they were applying those stereotypes to describe themselves or others. So for girls, that would include the characteristics of submissiveness, and nurturance. And for boys, that would include the type of physical activities that they engage in, dominance, achievement, and aggression. Look at some examples in different countries across the world. So, for example, in Korea, Girls, parents stress the emotional development and are expected to be kind and nurturing. And on the other hand, for boys, parents stress strength and intellect, and boys are expected to be strong and courageous. And specifically in the school setting, um, it is expected that both genders will attend elementary school, but as individuals get older, for example, middle school and high school, there will be more boys than girls. And even, for those girls who remain in the school, they're expected to take subjects that are geared more towards women, such as, I'm sorry, such as home economics, that will prepare them to become child bearers. And boys will be required to take more courses related to technology. And in India, age and gender play very important roles. Elders, and more specifically elder males, have more status or a higher status than younger individuals and women elders. And marriage is optional for males but not for females. And females in the family are considered visitors because they're expected that they will be leaving their own home to reside with their husband's family. And like I said before, elders, specifically elder males, have a higher status, but for females, the highest status that they can reach is mother of a son. Example is from Nigeria. And in early childhood, boys attend secret societies in which girls are not allowed to attend or to join. And in the education arena, boys are enrolled more frequently than girls. And there are certain areas in Nigeria where there's a rapid growth in educated females, but that is due to the support of different NGOs who have been working hard to make sure that females are also well educated. And in terms of marriage, women are expected to marry when they're really young and they're expected to have large families. Even marriage laws acknowledge that the husband has complete authority over his wife and children. Very quickly, I would just like to add my own experience of, like I said, coming from a Mexican background. I know that in the rural areas, um, girls are really encouraged, for example, to get married at a very young age and to find a husband who they know will be able to support them. And they're very, many times, like I said, especially when they're from more rural traditional areas, they're really discouraged from pursuing a higher education because they're expected that they will be staying at home with their children once they get married. I mean, and I think it's okay if someone chooses to stay at home with their children, but not, when they're specifically pushed to stay at home just because, that's what women are expected to do. So this was the first part of the lecture, and shortly I will be presenting the second.